Firstly, to Franchise India, thank you for providing this platform and enabling me to introduce my brand from South Africa to you. Primarily, I'm obviously looking to grow my business on the subcontinent, and really this presentation is just to give you some insight into what Primi is all about. It was formed in 1999, so we're in our 13th year, not nearly as successful as Marco's business. We have about 40 odd outlets. We'd like to also have 260 outlets, and perhaps he can show me the recipe for that. It was started by two individuals who could not have been more polarized or opposite in their thinking and their backgrounds. Peter Castle was a quantity surveyor who had been a successful property developer, and he developed this building in the early 90s for what was then a very successful food company called Spur and the Hard Rock Cafe, who many of you know. 2 months before these people were supposed to open their doors, they had a fallout with the franchisor in the US, and there was no tenant. So what Peter decided to do was go and attend a training course at the age of 35 and became the Spur and Hard Rock franchisee. Fast forward several years, he owned many stores and eventually owned the Spur in the waterfront, which is South Africa's and particularly Cape Town's flagship shopping center. We get about 35 million people through there, of which probably 7 or 8 million are tourists. And he had a very successful Spur there. At the same time, he opened another business called Joe's Cafe, which he'd, on his travels to the UK, imported this concept to South Africa, and whatever money he was making in his Spur, he was losing at this Joe's Cafe. But he believed in his location. On the other side, you've got Francesco Zanassi, a born restaurateur, worked in his father's restaurant from the age of 8 or 9. They relocated from Johannesburg when he was about 21 to Cape Town with his family and opened what was then known as Nino's restaurant in Greenmarket Square in Cape Town, probably the most successful restaurant at its time. They then opened a second store in a place called Camps Bay, and then there was objection to carrying the name Nino's because there was another brand known as Nino's Coffee and Sandwich Bar. At that stage, I was doing my articles as an attorney and in fact acted against Francesco Zanassi and acted for the Nino's Coffee and Sandwich Bar people. And the court ruled that they could only retain the Greenmarket Square store. The Camps Bay store had to change its name. So Peter Castle was closely watching the scenario unfold and realized he had a dilemma at the waterfront. He was losing lots of money, and these guys are good operators. So he approached them, and after months of deliberation and convincing, they decided to brand all three restaurants as Primi Piatti. At that stage, I don't think they thought much would happen. Peter was looking to relieve his cash flow burden, and Francesco and them were looking to overcome this name hurdle. To put things in perspective, the waterfront shop as Joe's was doing about $25,000 a month. His rental was $15,000. That just gives you some insight into the kind of money he was losing. In the first month that they opened as Primi Piatti, and people refused to call it Primi Piatti, they said Nino's at the waterfront. In the first month, they did $200,000. So they multiplied their turnover by 10. Today, that same restaurant, which I'll show you a video clip of later, is a $5 million restaurant. Primi's differentiating factor was not its food. Food is paramount in anything you do in F&B, but their differentiating factor was service. It's all about the people. Getting everybody to have a sense of purpose. You know, I've come to the subcontinent many times. The food in India is the best in the world. I'm an Indian, I'm fourth generation South Africa, I love the food here. But wherever you go, whether it's a Taj hotel, whether you go to a street cafe, the service experience, it's one of subservience, one of humility. And there's the haves and the have-nots. In South Africa, it's no different. We came out of apartheid in 1994. You had this huge black market that was unemployable, uneducated, needed direction, but also had a sense of entitlement, you know, because now It was run by, we in fact ran the country, we could vote. And what we've strived to do is give people a sense of purpose. And therein lay our success.